give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back. The Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analysts. It's the NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. My name's Corey Sullivan, and I am here, as always, with my co-host, Albert Garbage Time Gim. Albert, what's going on, man? I feel like it's been a while.
You say as always, but it's kind of been forever since we potted. But it's great to be back. We're real professionals. Took us maybe 15 minutes to figure out our mic situation because we do this all the time for 3 years, but still we're learning on the fly. But today is a really exciting day. We've got a guest on today. Corey, I love potting with just me and you, but it's fun to mix it up and have a guest join us. And yeah, Corey, go ahead. Intro our guest.
All right, we have Brandieeemac with us today. Very excited to have her on the show because I think that you are definitely the most knowledgeable Auburn sports fan that I follow. But I think just in general, your knowledge of like college basketball as a whole is really fun because you manage to, mix like humor and like actual facts and like analysis with it in such a great way. She's one of my favorite follows on Twitter, so I appreciate you joining the show today to talk some college basketball and some NBA drafts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here and talk about the school that I love and the basketball program that I love.
Yeah, we're really, really excited. And I mean, again, so you are awesome Auburn basketball fan. I feel like, the knowledge that you bring for anybody else who follows that team is kind of next level. So there are, kind of like NBA draft related Auburn people, whether it's this year or next year. So I feel like we should start it off like that. I mean, this is kind of your wheelhouse. And so I feel like, so for this year, we can get right into it. We have Jalen Williams, who went to Pitt and really had an awesome showing there. And he was solid all year round. Didn't get an invite to elite camp, which was a little surprising because he was one of the standouts. So what's your opinion on Jalen Williams? What did he bring to, Auburn this year? And do you think like he should have got a call up? And do you think he has an NBA future?
Yeah, so I was honestly very surprised that he didn't get a G League elite camp invite. That was especially with how well he did at Pitt. And we know that Pitt produces a lot of really great and has produced a lot of really great NBA athletes and is people who get invited to that. So I was pretty surprised by that too. And if you would have asked me this time last year, I probably wouldn't have said that I see a role for Jalen on an NBA roster. But I think after the year that he had being fifth-year senior, he kind of really showed more aspects to his game this year. So he's around 6'8", 245 pounds or so. And he played the 4 for us, so power forward paired next to Janai Broome. And he kind of his efficiency year over year has really just improved for the most part. And he spent all 5 years at Auburn, which is very rare in the college basketball landscape that we have now. And actually could have probably transferred out and started somewhere in the 2021-2022 season when he came off the bench behind Jabari Smith, but stuck with it. And last year had his best season of his college career. So he is a little older since he was in college for 5 years. He's 23 years old. So that's probably something that a lot of teams kind of aren't excited about there. But I think kind of what he brings to, or what he could bring to a team is a guy that's willing to play whatever type of role that he needs on a team. That's always how he's been his entire college career. He's not going to complain. He just wants to see his team win. And so with that, I think he gained a lot of really tangible skills when it comes to spacing, really great floor spacer for us. And that's something that we really needed this year to be able to see Janai's kind of shot be extended a lot. Was we needed Jalen to be where he needed to be so we could get Janai open, and Jalen played that role really, really, really well. So I think it's probably been talked about before, but Jalen has just super good I guess, kind of basketball IQ in a sense. Like, he's a really good passer and he's just super intelligent when it comes to the game. And he just doesn't chuck up a shot just to get one off. So I think that's something I love about his game, is that he's really, really unselfish. And that's sometimes hard to find when guys want to go to the league and be a star, or even just be on a team. They kind of want to be the guy that's, part of the show and is the main aspect of it. And that's just not who Jalen is as a person or a basketball player. And so that can kind of be a really good thing for teams that are looking for somebody to just kind of fill a role. So I really see kind of his future in the NBA, either on a two-way contract, G League. Hopefully that happens and we get to see him in Summer League, because I think if teams get to really see who he is as a player and as a person, that's gonna be somebody that they want just coming off of their bench, or somebody that's just a reserve for them in G League that they can call up if needed.
Brandie, really quickly. So piggybacking off of what you said, with Jalen, he's kind of a guy that you could just fit in, right? And you mentioned some of the floor spacing with him this season. Corey and I, we're pretty biased to lefties, right? And we feel like if you're a lefty, we're going to believe in you. And the one thing about Jalen, though, that I will say, and I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about this, is that most lefties, when I watch them shoot, I'm like, damn, that looks so good, right? With Jalen, though,
unless it's RJ Barrett.
Unless it's RJ Barrett. Who, but anyway, with Jalen Williams, I did feel like for a lefty, he didn't have the prettiest shot, but wanted to kind of get your insight on that, the development of his shot over his years in Auburn, how you feel like it's improved, of course, but what is the ultimate ceiling in your mind for him as a shooter? I know he's improved. It's just, for me, I think the shot looks a little wonky at times, but just if you can give us some context on that and where you think that ends up, where his shot ends up with him.
Yeah, it's definitely not fluid when you think of a lefty shooter, but his efficiency year over year for the most part has improved. The one thing that's probably a hesitation for some teams is that his volume just isn't high. And part of that has to do with the team that he played for. So basically in every Auburn game, we're playing 11 to 12 deep almost every single game. And so that's probably why some teams are a little leery about that shot, is because the efficiency is there. It may look a little weird, but you have to question it with the volume, and can that efficiency be maintained at a higher clip if needed? And so I would say, is definitely a hesitation that I would kind of be concerned with from an NBA team perspective. And so for a ceiling, I don't see him as a high volume guy in the NBA either, which might be part of why he didn't get a G League Elite Camp invite, because one, low volume shooter, but also he just doesn't crash the boards very tough either. And so in his position, being a 4, it's kind of hard when you don't crash the boards very tough and you're not a high volume shooter. But he did have 9 conference games where he shot 60% or better this past season, which is pretty insane. And then his free throw percentage was, I think, 83% or so this past season. And that improved 4 or 5 percentages from his 2022-2023 season. And so I think just the year over year improvement is indicative that the shot is there and he can be efficient. It may look a little weird, but I don't think the mechanics of his actual shot are what's the issue. I think it's just the question mark of, is that efficiency sustainable at a higher clip?
Yeah. Really quickly, Corey, sorry, I know you're going to go, but the last thing I just want to say is I've historically been wrong with guys that have weird looking shots, as I was so wrong on Tyrese Halliburton. So I totally get what you're saying. Go ahead, Corey. Sorry.
No, though, he's a good free throw shooter. He's had multiple years where he's proven to be have at least some touch there. And he's had a couple of years where he shot it pretty well. So I think that in the NBA, where he already plays, that, like you mentioned, kind of like a role players type of role, and he's had that as he's grown throughout his career. I can see the volume increasing, especially when an NBA team is this is what we need you to focus on in order to carve out a role. Because he does do other things that you want from a wing, and he's strong, and he has some, defensive prowess to him, and he could pass a little bit. So if there are the kind of breadcrumbs that we see that he can develop into the shooter, guys like him, wouldn't surprise me if, he doesn't get minutes as a rookie, but like maybe 3 years from now, all of a sudden he's like, oh, this guy came out of nowhere around game 35 in the NBA and he's carved out a role as a wing, because every team wants wings that could have kind of like an all-around game. Now, you mentioned Janai Broom, and I was shocked that he didn't stay in the draft. Now, I'm sure that he got himself a bag, and good on him. But he had such a tremendous year, not only for Auburn, as a team and leading them to where they went, but like just himself, the improvements that he made. And I was like, this dude, any stat you look at, like he is where you want your big man to be. So what did you see from him? Like, did you see any of this coming? Because he was always good, but like he was like great this year.
Yeah, I don't think I saw it coming for where he improved. I had a feeling he would improve, but I didn't expect it to be where he did. So I didn't expect him to extend his shot the way that he did. So his first 2 years in college at Morehead State, he had 5 total 3-point attempts and was 0 for 5 in those 5 3-point attempts. And then his third year in college, which was at Auburn, he was 9 for 31. So 29%, and obviously increased that usage or those attempts. And then this past season, he went 23 for 62, so 37% from 3. And I can't say that any of us really expected that. We have a really great developer on staff. It's actually Bruce Pearl's son. Stephen Pearl is who Janai credits a lot of that development to. And so I can't say a lot of us really saw that coming from him, because the season before, he was mainly known for just being an incredible shot blocker and rim protector, but he not only extended his shot, but really worked on his footwork. That was something I think that he got back from the G League Elite camp last year. Feedback was you need to improve on kind of your agility, also improve on your footwork. And so that's something that you could tell he dedicated the entire offseason to working on. And I think it was he had a monster year, and he really showed off that he's more than just like this, just a big man who has some agility. Like he can actually extend a shot. He can be efficient from behind the arc, and he's a legit threat now to step out of the post, which I don't think many of us saw that coming into the season. So I'm excited to see what he does next season. And I think a lot of us were very, very surprised that he came back this year, but I'm pretty positive he has some pretty high aspirations to go in the first round next year, and that kind of is playing a part in it. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what he does next year, but definitely surprised he came back. And I honestly don't know where else he can improve going into next year. So I'm excited to see what he does. Excited to see where we also play him. So there's we're filling out our kind of backup 4, potentially starting 4 positions, since we do have to replace Jalen. And there has been some chatter about Janai getting 8 to 10 minutes a game at the 4 this season. So I'm really excited to see him kind of play a little bit different on the floor. And so I think that's a possibility there for him. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure, Brandie. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think considering his size too, it's definitely something that could happen. But recently I was talking to Corey about this. I was talking to another NBA draft analyst about this. And the thing that was confusing for me, right, as we're having this conversation about Broom, is that it feels like, other than like the top centers in this class, like a Alex Sarr or a Klingon or an Edie, I feel like a lot of the big men in this class might end up kind of as like third centers in the NBA. Like, okay, so I'll be totally honest. I was having a conversation with Corey and about this other guy about Adembona, and in my head, I'm like, people are getting excited about Adembona with how he's playing at the combine. I'm just not one of those people. For me, it's like I get it. Like I've seen him up close. I saw him in person maybe 8-9 times in the last 2 years. Just scouting him, and I'm just like, I like Bona. I think he can be a third center. The way that I put it was, if I was Leon Rose, I would look at Adembona to replace Jericho Sims on my roster, but that's kind of where I'm capping like what my idea of what type of player he's going to be. The reason why I say all this was that with Broom, right? If you were looking at his outlook in the NBA, what would be a player that you would kind of comp him to? Because once again, like for me, I thought this would have been a good class for him to come out and he could be in the mix with guys like Bona and Misi and whatever. But maybe he goes back and has another great season. What type of NBA outlook, or if you had to comp him to a player, what kind of guys come to mind for you?
Not somebody who's currently an NBA player, but somebody who's in this draft class. He kind of reminds me of a Deron Holmes almost. I would say that's somebody who I kind of see him as, because Janai has everything that an NBA team wants in a big man: size, mobility, he can finish, and he can protect the rim. And then he does have something that's more of a feature in a Cortez game, which is that extension of his shot. And so it's kind of hard for me to think like in modern NBA, some centers that are like that. Maybe this isn't a true 5 at all. He plays a 4, but maybe a smaller Jaren Jackson Jr., maybe with a little less defensive juice than him, possibly, because Jaren can shoot really well from behind the arc. So I think he's almost like a hybrid 4 or 5, and Jaren Jackson Jr. with a lot less defensive juice is who I would kind of comp him to for current NBA.
Albert, I've always, when I started going back and watching him this year, I was like, he kind of reminds me of, now that he's spacing to 3 more, like a modern version of like if Taj Gibson came out. And like Taj was a guy who like came off the bench for a lot of years, but like also he probably should have been starting those years. And like, because he's not sexy, he just fills in the gaps and he does all the things you want your big man to do, but he might not, like at the NBA level, he's probably not going to like garner enough touches that he's going to like dominate the game. So like if Taj just shot 3s, I kind of feel like they can play similar roles. Like they're probably similar heights as well. So if you get that in any draft, I think that's pretty solid. Like you're not going to be like jumping for joy because he changed your franchise, but like if you already have like a solid foundation, he's somebody that might actually make you, like take you to a different level, even if it's not like taking you 2 levels up. You know what I mean? So, but Janai he's really interesting, and I can't wait talking about next year. My guy Tahad Pettiford.
Another lefty.
Another lefty. I saw Tahad a couple of years ago for the first time at Roselle Catholic in New Jersey. Absolutely torch the Overtime Elite. It was a tournament with 2 Overtime Elite teams. It was the Cold Hearts and the Young Dreamers. And it was like, I think Sar was on the Dreamers. Almanza. So like a bunch of Tyler Smith was on the Cold Hearts. So it was like a bunch of dudes that are in this draft, and he absolutely torched them. And I was like, who is this like 5'11" lefty kid that looks like Isaiah Thomas that like is super bouncy and is like the sickest shot maker ever. And when I saw he was going to Auburn, I was like, that is the perfect fit, because they get so much out of like these short, like quick twitchy guards. So, and Saint in the chat, shout out everybody watching live. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. We do see the chat, and when we'll get to some questions if you have some good ones. So, think of your best questions. But what is the feeling with Tahad coming? Because I think Tahad is going to really sneak up on people next year. Even potentially, even though he's 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot, whatever the hell he's going to be listed at.
He's listed at 5'10". We do have his official height on our roster now. So he actually, I don't think he's going to start this season, because Bruce already said kind of towards his end of the season presser that he's going to be playing the 2, and we already have Denver Jones that's coming back to start at the 2. And so I think he's going to back him up there, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did get a little bit of run at the backup 1. We're still filling our backup point guard position, but he's obviously brings a ton of athleticism, and he's super shifty, especially with that first step. But what a lot of people may not realize if they've only seen like his highlights on offense is that Tahad's a really good player on defense. Like was top 3 in 2023 in Nike EYBL circuit for steals per game. So in 2022, he had 1.1 steals per game. And then in 2023, 2.2 steals per game. And that was the third best in the Nike EYBL circuit. So he really knows how to defend well and turn that into offense. And so I'm most excited about that. We're already well known for our defense. It's always going to be a Bruce Pearl coach team as being good on defense. But honestly, just I'm excited about that. But then he just has a natural shot making ability to him that kind of goes in with that athleticism and kind of quickness that he has. So he's explosive, but something that's kind of hard with some of those explosive athletes is having control, especially in a guard. And Tahad does have really good control. So I think those are a couple of things that I'm excited about with him coming in. And the guard that he's replacing is kind of the complete opposite on the control end. So our backup 2 this past season was KD Johnson, and loved him. He was crazy, like fireball out there on the court, but at times like he just had no control. And so it's going to be really exciting to get somebody who's still just as quick as KD was, but is honestly way, way better on the control side. And KD was good on defense, and I don't think we're going to see a drop off there at all on defense. So
Yeah, KD has, since with Jabari, I mean, he likes to shoot.
yeah.
He likes to get some shots off. Go ahead, Albert.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's one thing about Tahad is he's a really efficient scorer too, which we definitely need that in our guards. We've had a couple of years of just not the best guard play efficiency wise. And so now with Denver starting Tahad backing him up, there's really not a ton of pressure for Tahad. And I don't see him just because of his size being a one and done type of guy necessarily. So there really is not a ton of pressure for Tahad coming in either, which is going to be huge for his game.
No, the only thing I wanted to say about Tahad was I would be a liar if I said I was grinding a Todd Pettiford film, but in preparation for the pod, I was texting with Corey. He's like, dude, he's a lot of fun. You got to check out his tape. And also not like a super complicated scout with him. But the one thing that I did notice with him is that why is it that he exclusively dunks with his offhand? Like, I thought that was...
Oh, yeah, he
really...
does dunk with both hands. He does it with both, actually. Yeah.
I know. But I'm saying, like, he dunks... he dunks with his right hand so much that it's like, why does he only do this? And then also he has that right hand, like really high floater that I was like, damn, that's pretty sick, you know? But anyway, I thought he was really interesting. And obviously you guys are going to have a lot of fun watching him.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed from coaching for as long as I have, sometimes I notice like the lefties that I have, they'll do everything else with their right hand. And I'm just like, are you a righty? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, but you shoot with your left hand? Like, yeah. I'm like, how do you swing a bat? They're like, righty. I'm like, okay, perfect. Good to know. Yeah. So I think it's pretty common for left-handed basketball players, you know,
Phil Mickelson,
the Ben Simmons rumor, right?
Or that too. Yeah. Also, Gregory Castillo.
We didn't see that with Jalen. He always dunked with his left hand. So, but yeah, Tahad dunks with both usually. So.
But Gregory Castillo, I apologize. My voice got lower because I don't know, I got some phlegm or something. This isn't like a Karl Anthony Towns type of situation.
We'll tell our producer to keep this part in. I'm just kidding. We don't have a producer. We're the producers. All right. So I think that's all the Auburn specific stuff that we have for today. So now let's focus more NBA draft oriented. We'll talk a little Grizzlies. So first, let's talk about some guys that you think are underrated in any way. So who do you like in this draft that you think like is not getting enough shine?
Yeah, I think first I'd probably have to go with Baylor Shireman. I think he's probably projected early second round or mid second round right now. And honestly, like I really see him as a late first rounder type of guy. And I think he has had a good showing this week at the combine, but he's somebody that comes to mind that I feel like just isn't really getting talked about a lot. And I don't know why, because I really like his game, and I feel like he's doing a lot of things right. So I'm kind of surprised that he's not getting talked about a lot. That's the first person that comes to mind when I think about just like underrated guys.
I think there's a chance he does go at the end of the first round.
Okay.
To be
Yeah,
honest.
I hope
I think
so.
there is. And I agree with you. I think he should. I think he has had a good showing. Being a Big East, guy and team, I've seen him a bunch, and I really like him. Like, he's pretty big. Like, I know he measured pretty well. Like, he's not. I think he's probably like 6'7", 6'7.5", whatever in shoes. But he's like a stocky, strong kind of guy. There's a moment in the combine. I think he got. I don't know if he got like hit with a blind screen or something. He went down and he got up and he had that like crazy look in your eye for somebody who like wants to get into like a bar fight or something, and they're like just get like amped because of the physicality. And that kind of crazy eye, I was like, all right, I'm going to jot that down. I like that. He liked getting hit. That was cool. But if you're a 6'7" shooter who can also like really pass the ball, and I also think he was like one of the most efficient pick and roll scorers out of like guys who are considered like top 60.
Yeah, he's
pretty
really
enticing package. Yeah. So it's a pretty enticing package. I thought that he was like definitely my favorite / the best prospect on Creighton this year. And but I think anytime you have a shooter, like, they're going to be valuable, and he's proven year over year that he's like a lights out shooter. So I think that's a really good call out.
Yeah,
I think
and get back.
oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, and his 3-point release, like being at his size that it is, it's really, really quick, and that's not very common sometimes when you have those big 6'7" guys. So I think that's something that a lot of teams probably like about him, is that quick release from the 3-point line.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, also just insanely productive last year. 18.5 points a game, 9 rebounds the shit out of the ball. Has really shot the ball well. If you guys ever pull up his sports reference page, he looks like a Globo Gym dodgeball guy. It's really hilarious. But I'm with you. I think he is a little underrated. I do agree with that. But I also think there's a real world he goes first round. And I think honestly right now, the biggest thing that I think we can kind of pull away from all the combine talk is that I don't think anyone really knows what the hell's going to happen in this class. And so like us hopping on this pod right now and saying, well, Shireman might go in the 20s, right? Or late teens. It's not crazy. We don't really know what the hell's going to happen with this class. So Brandie, I totally understand with you saying he's a little underrated. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good call out. Is there anybody else that you feel that way too?
Yeah, probably my favorite player in this class, not saying he's the best player by any means or anything like that, but it's somebody who I actually thought was going to stay in the draft last year. He went to the G League Elite Camp, got a combine invite, and it's Dylan Jones. I was keeping my eye on him last year. I was really surprised that he went back to Weber State. And I just absolutely love his game. There's just something about a guy that's I think he's 6'6", around that size, and he could really play on defense. Oh, sorry, that's my dog. He could really play on defense. Like, he can switch anywhere from 1 to 4 on defense, which I think is really valuable for an NBA team. And it's really interesting because he had the keys at Weber State. He basically ran that offense however he wanted to, whenever he wanted to. So I'm curious to see. He's going to get drafted. I'm not sure if he'll go in the early or late first round or early second round. I'm not quite sure where he'll end up, but I'm curious to see where he does end up, how he'll look on offense, because I think it's going to be a lot different from how he looked on offense in college to how that's going to be in the NBA.
Yeah, I love that call out. We actually, on No Ceilings, in the next week or two, we have a film session that I did with Dylan, where he takes me through his film, and we recorded for well over an hour. So I'm gonna have to edit it down so it's actually watchable. But he thinks the game so well. Like, I had an NBA scout like tell me, this is a dude who has elite feel, elite mind, and it's apparent. I mean, when you watch him make plays and just operate on the court. And like, if you watch the combine and you watch how he defended comparatively to Weber State, where like he couldn't get in foul trouble because he was the entirety of the offense. You saw like a different level of intensity even at the combine. and what he can do. And he also made a lot of strides physically between last year and this year. He said that was the feedback that he got the most from last year to this year, is that he needed to like work on his body. It wasn't even the shot. It was his body that he needed to work on. So he got way more athletic in all of the agility drills. And I just love, he is a major chip on his shoulder guy. So I was in the gym with him the morning that the initial G League Elite Camp invites came out last year, and he was not on it. And he brought a level of focus to that workout, and he was pissed. But he brought a level of focus to that workout that was insane. He didn't say a word the entire workout. And like, there were other players training for the draft that were like, he just went in, shot the crap out of the ball. And then eventually he got the invite, and he, obviously took that and ran with it. Albert, we saw him at the Hoop Summit, last year, and he turned a Hoop Summit, Portland Generals invite to ultimately getting to the combine. And then this year, I thought he played really well. He didn't shoot it super well, and at least in the first game, but like, he rebounded, he made plays, and he still managed to score. So I think Dylan's a great call out, because he's got the physicality, he's got the multifaceted skill set and dimensions, and he thinks the game. He's got feel. He's gonna have to shoot it at volume, like in the league. But like you mentioned, like, his role is gonna look so different. And, like, he's going to have to adapt to that. And maybe it happens fast, maybe it happens slow. I don't know. But I think ultimately he'll get there. He's 85% at the line this year. So he's definitely a very interesting prospect.
Yeah, I'm almost positive his efficiency year over year improved too. And like we've been talking about with his role looking a lot different, I think teams are going to look at him more of a defensive stopper in a sense, compared to just this kind of threat on offense, because he has a very strong jumper. So I don't think there's any question about his offensive capabilities there, but I think his real value to a team is going to be actually on the defensive side of the ball more than the offensive side of the ball, which if you kept up with him in college, you'd probably be pretty confused by that. But it makes a lot of sense when you think about the modern NBA game, and his fits very well on the defensive side of the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we went through his defensive tape, I was able to highlight like some of the ways that like, even like, there were just flashes maybe, but like when he brought it out, it was like, oh, that'll work at the next level for sure. All right. So the Grizzlies have a top 10 pick, and they have some second round picks. What do you think their biggest needs are? What do you want them to come out of this draft accomplishing?
Yeah, I know that there's been some rumors about them shopping around that 9th pick, and I don't think that he's going to fall this far, but if he does, I really want them to draft Donovan Clingan. It's very clear the Grizzlies' biggest need right now is a big man with the departure of Steven Adams. And obviously there's Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 4. So you really need somebody that can rebound, because Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't the best rebounder at times. And so I really hope they come out of the draft with a really strong center, but there has been rumors in the last, I think, 2 days that they're shopping that around for kind of a win now player. But I would like to get Donovan Clingan if he's available. And if he isn't available, then potentially a wing or a combo guard. So maybe Dalton Connect if he's available still at 9, or Reed Shepherd, which I don't think he'll be, but if he is, then someone like him. You can never really have too many wings, so I'd be fine with Dalton Connect over Reed Shepherd if he is available. But yeah, I would really like Clingan. Wouldn't also mind Deron Holmes too. Either of those two guys for big men would be something that I'd be happy with. For Clingan, he's just a guy that, I mean, he has defensive instincts that I feel like you just can't teach. It's natural talent when it comes to him. And it seems like since the national championship game, he's really slimmed down a little bit too. So that's one thing with him and some of the other bigs in this class is a lot of them are kind of slower, which is, it's given with a big. But yeah, I really want Clingan. He's good in screen and roll actions. That would be like over the moon if they come out at 9 with Clingan.
I think those are great calls. I think with Clingan though, and Corey, I think you'd agree. I mean, there's a very real world he could go 1 right? At this point, I know, I
wow.
get it. Everyone's talking about Alexander Sarr and all that stuff, which is understandable, right? We've done the Sarr pod and we've talked a lot about him to be that size and that agile and all that stuff. And I mean, people believe that he's going to be able to shoot it as well. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I mean, it's a possibility, right? So to be 7 foot and to move like he does and to potentially shoot, obviously I understand the injury, but I mean, we've talked about it a lot here at No Ceilings. I know Rucker feels that way. I know the two Tylers feel that way. A lot of us here, we're big fans of Klingon and how he could be the number 1 pick in this class. And I don't think that'd be crazy at all. And then piggybacking off of the two guys that you mentioned with Dalton and Reed Shepard, I mean, you're talking to the right guys. We love Dalton and we love Reed, and I think Corey and I are the only ones on our site right now that have Reed number 1 on our big board. So totally get that. But Brandie, I did want to ask something. So I did see a tweet that you put out there where I think it was Brett Usher, and he was asking like, who do you think has the highest ceiling in this class? And you put a photo of Modest Buzelis, right? And I think this is a really fun conversation that we can have because he is, I think, very easily one of, or if not the most divisive prospect in this class, I think, especially for us at No Ceilings. But wanted to kind of get your insight on why you put him as your answer, and also like, you know, your overall scout on him and how you view his game overall.
Yeah. Well, one, I think a lot of people probably stopped talking about him. I think he got injured, had like an ankle injury or something like that this past year, kind of early on. So people weren't really talking about him as much because of that. But any guy who's a wing that's 6'8", I feel like that has, you know, that's good on and off ball. Sorry. He has the ability to just like I would say initiate fast. 1 second.
Yeah, me too, bud.
Yeah, don't worry. I mean, Maxwell's daughter is on air all the time, so we can have a dog on the.
I just really like one, like just his. I think he hasn't shown like enough ball handling to be like a top option necessarily type of guy, and that's probably why he hasn't gotten some of the hype that I think is deserved of him. But great playmaker, which is obviously a really great thing. But one, I love his ability to initiate fast breaks. I think that's huge, and just creating in space is big too. And catch and shoot. I think he's probably one of the best guys in catch and shoot in this entire draft. So that's, I think, why I like him a lot. I'm not as familiar with his game. I've only like recently started watching some of the international players once the lottery finally happened and wherever all the teams ended up. But yeah, I really like him. I like his size. I think he has a lot of growth to do too. So once he gets into the league and puts some muscle on, then he's going to have like an added kind of physicality to his game that you don't necessarily see if you turn some of his tape on right now. So
I like that he's got some shit to him. You know, like he calling out Ricochet. I like that about him. He blocked the entire No Ceilings team on social media, which
gosh.
I think.
He sounds like a Grizzly to me.
I like it. You know, he might just be tuning out the noise. Like that's entirely possible. Or he was like, you know what? That Albert Gim didn't like my game, blocking the whole No Ceilings team. And I like the FU in him.
Yeah. I mean, so I think he could be like almost like a Franz Wagner type of player. And
right.
Probably similar to that. And I feel like you can never have enough of those kind of guys on your team. I feel like that's probably his best comp, thinking about just like size and style of play right now.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common one. It makes sense. I mean, you look at them, like their games are very similar. And I think the most surprising thing for me with Buzelis this year is I wasn't expecting to like him more defensively than offensively. Because I think, you know, he made some real nice strides on the defensive end. He really used his length to contest shots. I don't know how much weak side shot blocking from kind of like a wingy 4 like that matters or will manifest itself in like actual NBA games. But it's a nice, you know, skill to have, and at least shows like his ability to be in the right spots and, you know, contest and use his length at the rim. And he does have big broad shoulders too. So like he's pretty skinny right now, but I think, I'm not sure about his lower body, but I think at least his upper body, he's got opportunity to kind of put some good weight on too. I do think his ceiling is one of the highest. I mean, if you just look at like pure, like if this guy reaches his ceiling, right? Like just saying somebody has a high ceiling doesn't mean they're going to reach their ceiling. But if you like look at their top outcome, like you're looking at a guy who is probably going to be 6'10" in shoes. Like he was like 6'8" point whatever. So 6'10" in shoes, who can dribble, pass, shoot, defend, like kind of a modern wing, you know, like that's what you want. So I think that's pretty fair to say he would have the highest ceiling. Like I don't think it's a controversial take.
Yeah, I do. So I definitely kept up with him more when he was in high school than this past season. And so there was one thing in high school I feel like that he didn't, whenever he was playing in the EYBL circuit, he didn't necessarily protect the ball very well. I think he was like I think he might have had like a negative assist to turnover ratio. Like it wasn't pretty. So I think right now for like NBA ready, that's probably why he isn't getting talked about as much on that aspect, because I think he is a slightly of a project because of that. And because he does like his potential, I think does have a lot to do with his size. Like he needs to become stronger, like both lower body and upper body. And he does need to be better at protecting the ball. I'm assuming he probably had a similar year this past season, kind of like how he did in high school. So I get some people who probably aren't super high on him, but the potential is there. Like you said, like whether he reaches it or not sure, but I think he shows flashes to be a really, really great player and one of the best ones in this class.
No, I totally understand all that. Honestly, I brought it up more as a joke. I think at this point, people really think we hate him a lot. But to be fair to us, if anybody were to go back and listen to the pod that we did where we only talked about Modest, Corey, we did a solo pod on him, right? It might have been a duo.
I want to say we did it right after, like pretty shortly after they had the games against SAR in Perth and like the G League showcase. It was mostly like high school, so it was pretty early on when we did it.
I think if you go back and listen to that pod, I think Corey and I, we were pretty positive about his game and his outlook. And then he had the season that he had for the G League Ignite. And I think if you were to ask him, hey, Modest, how did you feel about the season in the G League Ignite? I think he'd tell you, I think I learned a lot. It wasn't maybe the exact season that I wanted, but it was a great experience, I think is what he would say. Maybe I shouldn't speak for him, but whatever, I'm here doing it. But ultimately, I think where I'm at with Modest is that, like, I think we had positive feelings about him early on and then didn't have maybe the best season. And yet, like Corey said, Brandie, I don't think your take is like a hot take. You saying that he might have the highest ceiling. It's just, yeah, maybe part of it is like I just have a chip on my shoulder too because he blocked me on Twitter. But a very interesting prospect, and he deserves the talk that he's getting.
Well, to be fair, none of the Ignite guys really kind of lit the world on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think if Ron Holland would have gone to college, I think he would have gone top 3 in this draft class. I don't know if that is or isn't a hot take, but I think he's somebody that should have gone to college and been a one instead of going to G League Ignite.
Yeah, there are still people who I think, believed in him as a prospect coming into the year that like still have him top 3 based off that. So like, I think that if he would have went to college, it probably would have been, we would have seen a more likely outcome for him than what he got to show. Because look, I'm not saying Ron is not going to be a good player. I just don't see him as like the number one shot creator type necessarily. Like, I don't think that's the best utilization of his game. And that's kind of the role that he took on with the Ignite. But I think if he was in college where like, it's cool that you're a 5-star freshman and everything, but also I'm a college coach who's trying to win games. And, like where we have rules and a system that you need to fit into, that structure, I think really would have helped him. So I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think for most of these guys, the G League Ignite context was not super great. I think Tyler Smith made the most of it. I think he probably, maybe if he went to college, he would have been in a similar boat. Maybe he would have been a Taylor Hendricks type guy even. So maybe, but I think he helped his stock from where it was with the Overtime Elite. But outside of him, like Almanza, people were talking about him going one coming into the year. And now, I mean, there's talks of him going to the NBL instead of like the NBA draft next year. like there's an avenue for that potentially. So like none of these guys really help their stock, and now the program doesn't exist anymore. So like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Tyler
you
Smith
can.
is interesting because I feel like he's just having a not great week at the combine. So, like you just said, he definitely elevated his draft stock by going to G League Ignite. But then this week, at least from everything that I've seen and watched and all of that, he just is not having the great week. I think he shot like 40% in the free throw drill too, which is like just not obviously not great. So that's somebody that I was kind of excited to see like go through the process and stuff, and have been a little disappointed in his performance so far.
Yeah, I think for him at least he has a track record of shooting. So like, I don't know, chalk it up as nerves, which would, maybe not the best thing to not perform when, the pressure's on. But I think with him, he was another guy like that I've seen a bunch of times, like leading up to this year. And I got to break down film with him too. And he's like super self-aware of who he is as a player. And I think that's a really underrated trait for prospects, because there are some prospects that you speak with and you'll be like, who do you watch, or who do you think you could play a role similar to? And they'll be like, I really love watching LeBron and KD, and I love taking stuff from their game. And it's like, all right, good luck. And then there are some prospects who you be like, who do you think you could play like, or this and that? And they give like realistic guys that they can emulate. And he was very self-aware, and he had a good personality. And I think that teams will look past the shooting drills just because he shot it really well in the actual game. So yeah, he's somebody though that I can't pin his draft stock, because it would surprise me if he went in the lottery, but it wouldn't shock me. And we've seen some shocking stuff go down together in person.
We did
at an arena, Albert.
Brandie, I had a question. So before you mentioned that for Memphis, you'd like to add a wing, right? And or like you said like a combo guard, whatever. So if we can, let's have the conversation about, because on your roster currently, you guys have Zaire Williams, got Jake LaRavia, right? You guys have these types of guys. Talk to me, because Corey and I were in the building when Zaire Williams went top 10, and we kind of looked at each other and we were like, maybe we don't know shit. Like maybe this is just, maybe we're living in a simulation. But if you could speak a little bit to that whole experience of having Zaire Williams, and Corey and I, we were big believers in Jake LaRavia, still believe in him, right? But then also the idea of adding a guy like Dalton Connect, right? If you can speak a little bit to like the wing situation in Memphis and how you're feeling about all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, Memphis they always like draft super weird, I feel like. And just for some context, I moved to Tennessee like 6 years ago, and really was more of a player fan more than anything. And that's how I became a Grizzlies fan, was because I loved John Morant when he was at Murray State. So I'm not as familiar with like their history of drafting, but since I've been a fan in like the last 6 years, I feel like it's been just super weird. And just the guard / wing room there, because it's really like, it's interesting because you have Luke Kennard and Zaire Williams and all these guys who just kind of don't seem to fit necessarily without a guy like Steven Adams there, or whenever Ja is hurt. So it's kind of like, one, you never know what's going to happen with Ja, and two, like we need some length, and that's going to have to come like at the 3 spot, I feel like, at this point, besides where we need them at center. And so I'm probably not as high on Zaire Williams as some Memphis Grizzlies fans might be. Like, he's not somebody that like really excites me. I think like his rookie season was probably like the best season he's had with us. And I feel like since then it's kind of just gone downhill a little bit, but there are a lot of Grizzlies fans that are super high on him. And so, yeah, I would love to draft a wing. And if it's somebody that we draft like with that 9th overall pick, I'd probably be over the moon, because it means that we draft a Dalton Connect type of player. But I could also see them going a kind of wing forward almost type of player, like a Cody Williams. And so I think they just need size there, because that guard room is small. It feels small, at least right now. And so and there's just some lack in 3-point shooting. And I think Zaire Williams, like he was a good 3-point shooter his rookie year, and he's still a decent 3-point shooter. I just am not as high on him as some other people are. And so I'd like to have a guy who, sorry. I'd like to have more of like a, I don't know, Tim Hardaway Jr. type of player in the Grizzlies guard room, wing room. So that's kind of what I see in the future for the Grizzlies is if they can get somebody like Tim Hardaway Jr. type of player, I would love that.
I mean, so they also have a second round pick. So like if they went best player available, swing, whatever that ends up being, maybe it's Cody Williams who I still really like a lot. Albert, I still think you're in on Cody too. You actually saw him in person.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Baylor. Like if Baylor is not taken in, the first round, like the Grizzlies have a pick at 39. So maybe you get a Baylor Shireman, maybe a Peyton Sanford, and you accomplish, your shooting with a guy like that even later. And so you could still kind of get that element, from a wing. I think there's a lot of ways that the Grizzlies can go in this draft because really, like we said, we think that Baylor should maybe be a first round pick, but like he might not be. And like, there's a number, like who knows how it's going to play out. Some of these guys might be available later in the draft too.
Caravan. Yeah. I think Sanford's actually somebody I mentioned to Albert too.
Yeah.
Just as a late round pick that the Grizzlies could go with for, that wing depth that we need. A little concerned about his ability to switch on the floor in front of NBA athletes, but he's definitely a guy who can shoot. And yeah, I like him. He's a good spot up shooter too. Good at shooting off movement. So that's somebody that I think isn't really being talked about a lot in this draft, but I definitely think he's going to go like late second round. So if he's still on the board, I would be really thrilled if the Grizzlies were able to get him with either of their 2 second round picks. Cause I think that they have 2 in the second round.
Yeah. Yeah. I think all those names are really intriguing, especially, and that's the thing, Corey. I feel like in this draft, we might find some like excellent value in the second round just because we're going to have so much chaos in the front end. I just mentioned like a guy like Alex Caravan could be there, right? He could be interesting. A guy that I'm just like on the road to redemption with Harrison Ingram. Never thought I'd be here, but here we are. A guy that's really worked on his shooting. Someone like Jalen Bridges, maybe even like there are a lot of guys that might end up being there that you guys like might be interested in. And I think that's like such an interesting part of this. Like another guy that just comes to mind. Like imagine you get like Antonio Reeves in the second round, right? For Kentucky, 6'5", 6'6", really shot the ball. He's a guy who can go and get a bucket when you need him to. You saw him do that a ton for Kentucky last year. Like there are a lot of guys. Also, Corey, your boy. Like imagine like I know he's a little bit smaller end, but like with his grit and his shooting, a guy like Cam Spencer, like imagine you throw him on the grit and grind Memphis team and you have him running around just being like an irritant, but also just an absolute knockdown shooter who can handle the ball a little bit too. Like that's what I mean. Like I think with Memphis in the second round, if they have 2 picks and they use both of them, they might end up with some really fun value with the exact type of guys that you're looking for, Brandie.
Yeah, and that's honestly with a small market team like the Grizzlies, what they kind of always try to do, which is why I say the Grizzlies kind of draft super weird. It's usually guys that you're not expecting. Like Gigi Jackson has ended up being really, really great for Memphis. And I love that you said Jalen Bridges because Auburn actually started their season off against Baylor, and he kind of lit us up on the boards and just from the floor. He was one of the best players out there. Besides their 2 guards out there. So I actually really like that Jalen Bridges call. I didn't think of him before, but I could definitely see him fitting on the Grizzlies.
Or, I mean, speaking of Gigi Jackson, like as a guy who came in with a lot of height, obviously younger guy because he had reclassified, came in with a lot of height, like he was originally in this class and he was going to be the number 1 pick. But then who was the number 1 pick coming into the year in a lot of outlets, including our own? Like a guy like Justin Edwards might fall to like that first Memphis pick. And you talk about a small market team, like maybe that's how you get talent, right? Like you take a shot at that part of the draft on guys who have this high level of talent that you maybe won't ordinarily be able to get. And that's another guy who he actually like Justin Edwards shot the ball really well this year at Kentucky. Like I think he ended up at like 38%. Made some, nice shots in the first combine scrimmage. So like you said, Albert, I think there's a lot of value all over this draft. And I think that, when there's talk of it's a weak draft or whatever, it's like at the top, agreed. But maybe there's good value elsewhere. And a team like Memphis, that's what they need, right?
Yeah. And I do want to say this, like, Brandie, clearly you guys had, there's no nice way to put it, you had the season from hell.
Yes.
Whether we're talking about injuries, we're talking about off the court stuff, just absolutely mind-boggling stuff happened in Memphis last year. Maybe this is like the stepping stone into a new chapter. Like, not to say that Ja's going anywhere, but, you know, Steven Adams is gone now. And, you know, you have kind of this like younger contingent. Also, I mean, like Marcus Smart's still there, but you get what I'm saying. Like, maybe this is the opportunity with this draft class to bring in 2 or 3 guys that, you know, may not have like huge names or like star allure type of stuff. But as you mentioned, right, with the names that we just mentioned, if you get in like 3 guys that are rock solid guys who played really well in college and can come in and contribute right away, even if it's off the bench, maybe there could be a culture shifting next chapter, next step type of situation going on in Memphis. And I'm sure, Brandie, that's something that you as a fan would be really excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And somehow the Grizzlies always find a way to draft guys that like people just aren't talking about. And so if they end up using one of their second round picks, there's another G League Ignite guy that I really like that I think is going to go in the second round, Almanza. And I don't want to say his first name because I'm going to butcher it, but he's somebody that I would also love if the Grizzlies drafted. I think he's a really underrated prospect that just isn't getting a ton of talk, and love his game, like defensive capability on that side of the floor. Struggles a little bit like against post-up players, but he's somebody who I think that we could really develop because the Grizzlies have a pretty good developmental system for drafting as underrated guys, getting them at good value, and being able to turn them into the player they want them to be.
Yeah, Almanza. It's super weird prospect. Like one of the most decorated international prospects like in recent history. But yeah, weird year for him ultimately, and but he's an interesting guy. You know, something that sticks with me when Ignacio wrote about Sarr is like how many different developmental contexts that we got to see him in, and how helpful that could be when you're like looking at a prospect, because you see all the different ways that they can be used and how they've developed. And Almanza's pretty similar in that respect, where playing for Spain and really thriving there, but also played and developed with OTE and then went to the G League. And so he's a guy that it would not surprise me at all if he ended up being a good pro, because he was a guy who people thought was potentially going to be a lottery pick. So like a lot of times you look back and you're like, all right, they had a bad year, they dropped, and then they figured it out in the right situation in the NBA. So he's definitely another good call out. Shout out to everybody again watching live in the chat, rocking with us on YouTube and on Twitter. Albert, I cannot believe how many people tuned in to the mock draft and the post lottery reaction that we had here at No Ceilings. That was hell of a night, man. What a crazy show. I mean,
Corey, I was there with you. I was there, but no, not on the stream, but you know what I mean? Like I was in the comments trying to have fun and trying to be stay in the mix, but you're right. And what a time it is right now that this draft it's everywhere. I mean, if you're watching the combine stuff, I'm sure all you're hearing is Bronny James, but there's a lot going on, guys. There's a lot of great talent in this class with a lot of really, really fun stuff. And so, Corey, I'm right there with you. And hey, for all our fans out there, we can't appreciate and thank you guys enough for jumping on to all our material. And we have a lot of really fun stuff coming up. So let me stop there and let Corey go. But yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming.
Yeah, we do have a lot of stuff coming. A lot of last minute grinding to get in before this draft. But Brandie, dude, this was so much fun. I am very appreciative of you taking your time to join us. I'm glad we got a tag team partner. Shout out to your dog. You got to tell us what kind of dog it is before you go.
She's an Australian Shepherd.
Oh.
Yeah,
Love
her
it.
name's Aria, so she's named after a famous eagle
Arya
that's at
Stark.
Auburn.
Oh.
So everyone always thinks Game of Thrones, but no, she's named after something Auburn. So yeah, she's a ball of joy. So
Well, we're happy she got to join us too. Tell all the people in the No Ceilings community, where they can find you on the internet and go and enjoy your work as much as we do here.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Brandieeemac, and that's Brandi and then 3 E's, MAC. Just post a lot of content on there about basketball, but mostly it's Auburn content, Auburn basketball, that kind of stuff. So if you're into college basketball in general and Auburn basketball, definitely give me a follow there. If you ever just want to send me a DM and chat about anything hoops related, I have a college basketball group chat. If you want to be added in that, we kind of talk about anything that's going on in the college basketball world, but obviously talk about NBA basketball in general. Good group of people in there. So if you're interested in being added in there to join a community too, to shoot me a DM and I can get you in there too.
You heard it here, folks. Here first. Shoot that DM, get in there. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us again. Albert, tell the people around the World Wide Web where they can find you.
You can find me all over the place. That's a weird way to say it. I'm at Alberto Gim on Twitter is where you can find me. I'm at GTGNBA on Instagram is another place where you can find me. But also, as always, I'm styled by A Bit NYC, Kevin Park. He's dropping some new stuff, and we're actually collaborating on something.
Got the new colorway.
I do. I really like this hoodie. It's like a blue.
That's tough.
I don't even know, but we're doing something exclusively with me. It'll be in A Bit NYC / Albert collab thing that'll be dropping soon. So if you guys are interested, please check us out. And obviously, we'll be posting announcements and stuff on my personal stuff. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
And you can find me at Corey Teleba and all of our work at No Ceilings NBA on socials, noceilingsnba.com. Subscribe. It's free. And, we're coming at you 5 days a week. So I feel like it's something that you should do. And if you made it this far into the show and also the draft process, you should do that if you haven't already. And if you're new here, welcome. It's an exciting time. And I think that you're going to enjoy our stuff so much that you're never going to leave. And you're going to just be a member of the community. So appreciate everybody for rocking with us. A lot of fun stuff coming up. Enjoy the rest of this pre-draft process. Everyone, good luck to all of you. We have the lottery standings. Go to war for your favorite prospect. You don't have to worry about being wrong because we all are. So enjoy it. And we'll be here same time next week. Until then, we're out. Peace.
Peace.